"The situation is hopeless," declared Counselor Zuria. "They respect nothing but strength, and we've shown them none. This is suicide." A buzz of agreement rippled through the chamber. Hope was draining fast, like water from a cracked cistern. That's when Captain James Jim Richards leaned back in his chair, boots kicked up on the table, and exhaled a cloud of cigar smoke. "I'll do it," he said, his voice calm and certain. The entire room froze. All eyes turned toward the human in the corner, the only one who wasn't part of the elite diplomatic corps. Jim was a retired military officer, scruffy and unrefined, a relic from Earth's wars before humans joined the Galactic Federation. The Council had kept him around as a sort of advisor, though no one had seriously expected him to contribute. Counselor Arco, a stoic reptilian alien, narrowed his amber eyes at Jim. "You? Negotiate with the Xerexians? They'll tear you apart before you can even open your mouth." Jim blew a smoke ring, letting it linger in the air before responding. "Maybe. But that's the thing about humans, Counselor. We don't give up just because something looks tough. We lean into it." Zuria's beak clicked in disbelief. "Every species that's tried has been slaughtered. What makes you think you can succeed where we failed?" Jim shrugged, tapping a cigar on the ashtray. "I've dealt with bullies before. The trick isn't to out-talk them or out-fight them. You've got to make them believe you can. It's a game of bluffing, and humans are pretty damn good at it." The murmurs resumed, but this time they carried a different tone: curiosity. Despite their misgivings, the Council had run out of options. Another failed negotiation could mean war, and the Xerexians' fleet would raise dozens of worlds before they could mount any real defense. A.R. Cole's voice cut through the noise. "And if you fail, Captain Richards, what then?" Jim met his gaze evenly. "Then I'll be dead, and you can find someone else to clean up the mess. But I don't plan on failing." After a long pause, Counselor Zuria nodded, her feathers smoothing as she reached a decision. "Very well, human. You have your chance. But understand this. If you provoke them further, it will be on your head." Jim gave her a lazy salute. "Understood." As the meeting adjourned, Jim lingered behind, watching the alien delegates file out. They looked at him with skepticism, a few with outright contempt. It didn't bother him. He knew what they thought. Humans were newcomers in the galactic scheme, still considered primitive and reckless by many. But that was exactly why Jim knew he had a shot. The Xerexians had already dismissed every diplomatic move as weakness. What they needed now was someone who could flip the script, turn the negotiation into something they understood, a challenge. Back in his quarters, Jim reviewed the Xerexians' culture. They were brutal, sure, but they weren't mindless. They followed a strict code of honor. Strength was everything to them. Previous diplomats had tried appealing to their logic, but Jim understood instinctively that logic didn't matter here. This was about respect, and respect in Xerexian terms had to be earned, not begged for. If they wanted strength, Jim would give them the illusion of it. He packed light for the trip, just a standard-issue blaster, his lucky flask, and a fresh pack of cigars. No need for fancy tools or grand speeches. This wasn't going to be a negotiation in the traditional sense. It was going to be a poker game, and Jim planned to go all in. As the sleek Federation shuttle launched from the capital planet, Jim sat alone in the cockpit, his reflection staring back at him from the glass. The vast expanse of space stretched out ahead, and somewhere in the distance lay Xerex Prime, the homeworld of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. The mission felt less like a diplomatic effort and more like a suicide run. But Jim had faced worse odds before, and if there was one thing humans were good at, it was surviving the impossible. He leaned back in his seat, lighting another cigar as the stars streaked by. "Negotiation, huh?" he muttered to himself with a grin. "Let's see if they can handle human diplomacy." And with that, Jim rocketed towards his rendezvous with death or victory. Xerex Prime was a world as unforgiving as its people. Towering volcanic mountains spewed ash into a blood-red sky, and the air hummed with the constant thrum of distant warships and military drills. As Jim's shuttle descended toward the fortress city of Varkon, He could see the massive Xerexian soldiers marching in perfect formation, their armor reflecting the fires of the planet's molten surface. It was a world built for war, a place where weakness was eradicated with extreme prejudice. Jim landed in the heart of the city, where a contingent of warriors awaited his arrival. Their leader, a hulking figure clad in black and metal and bristling with weapons, stood at the forefront. This was High Commander Varric, the undefeated warlord of the Xerexian forces. His face was a tapestry of battle scars, and his glowing yellow eyes fixed on Jim with the intensity of a predator assessing its prey. Jim stepped out of the shuttle, hands relaxed at his sides. No formal bows, no diplomatic pleasantries, just a casual stride forward. A flick of his wrist brought a cigar to his lips, and with a practiced motion he lit it. The scent of smoke curled into the heavy air, the sound of his footsteps the only interruption in the ominous silence. "You must be the human they sent to die," Varric growled. The Xerexian warriors surrounding him snorted in derision, already anticipating the bloodbath that would follow. Jim exhaled a cloud of smoke, meeting Varric's gaze without a trace of fear. "Last I checked, the idea was to talk before we got to the killing part. Unless, of course, you're scared I might say something you can't handle." The Xerexian warriors bristled at the insult, hands drifting toward their weapons. But Varric raised a massive hand to stop them. His eyes narrowed as he studied Jim, clearly not used to anyone speaking to him like this and surviving. There was a flicker of something behind those eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or begrudging respect. "I've broken better negotiators than you, human," Varric said, stepping forward, each word like a crack of thunder. "Your kind has no understanding of strength. Your leaders hide behind words and treaties, hoping we'll lose interest. Tell me why I shouldn't tear you apart right now." Jim grinned, his body language completely at ease. "Because I'm not here to beg or plead. I'm here because you're bored, Varric." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the Xerexian seemed genuinely taken aback. Varric raised an eyebrow. "Bored?" Jim took a step closer, his voice dropping as if he were letting Varric in on a secret. "Oh yeah, let's face it. Taking planets from the weak, smashing civilizations that can't fight back? It's gotta get old. You want a real challenge, something that'll push you. That's why I'm here." The Xerexian warriors exchanged confused glances. Varric, however, remained still, staring at Jim as if weighing his words. Jim knew he was pushing a dangerous line, but if there was one thing he understood, it was pride, especially the kind warriors like Varric lived by. "You see, the Galactic Federation, they don't get it. They think they can reason with you, convince you to stop because it's the right thing to do." Jim made air quotes, his tone mocking. "But I know better. You don't stop because someone asks nicely. You stop when someone proves they're stronger. And that's exactly what I'm offering." Varric's expression shifted, a glint of intrigue crossing his face. "You think you're stronger than me, human?" Jim's grin widened. "I think humans play a different game than the rest of the galaxy. You're used to strength being measured by how hard you hit. But where I come from, strength is measured by how well you can get in someone's head and make them blink first." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The Xerexians were watching their leader closely, waiting for his response. Varric's gaze burned into Jim, weighing the audacity of the human's words. Then, slowly, a cruel smile spread across the warlord's face. "You think you can outsmart me in a battle of wills?" Varric asked, his voice low, dangerous. "You think you can make me blink?" Jim tapped ash from a cigar, meeting Varric's challenge head-on. "I'm betting on it." Varric barked a harsh laugh, a sound that echoed across the stone walls of the fortress. He took a step back, still laughing, and spread his arms wide. "Very well, human. Let's see if you're as clever as you claim. I will not kill you yet. We will negotiate, but under Xerexian terms." The warriors around Varric relaxed slightly, though their eyes still glittered with the promise of violence. Jim simply nodded, knowing he'd just won the first round of this deadly game. He had Varric's attention, and that was all he needed. "What are your terms?" Jim asked, his tone as casual as if he were asking for a drink. Varric leaned forward, towering over the human, his grin feral. "We will not discuss peace. We will discuss a contest. If your people are as strong as you say, let them face my finest warriors in a series of trials: combat, strategy, survival. If you win, we will consider your federation worthy opponents and withdraw. If you lose, your people will submit to us without a fight." Jim's heart pounded in his chest, but outwardly he remained calm. A contest of trials was better than an immediate war, and he was banking on human ingenuity to tip the scales. He took one last drag from his cigar and flicked it to the ground. "Deal," he said, locking eyes with Varric. "But when we win, you'll call off this invasion permanently." Varric's grin only widened. "If you win, human. If." The arena chosen for the contest floated above the atmosphere of a neutral world, a vast expanse of open space where each trial would test the mettle of human and Zyrexian alike. The Galactic Federation watched from a distance, broadcasting the trials to every corner of the galaxy. Jim stood at the helm of his ship, flanked by a team of Earth's finest strategists and soldiers, every one of them handpicked for their ingenuity and grit. Across the battlefield, the Zyrexians prepared with ritual precision, their warriors clad in ceremonial armor, gleaming under the light of distant stars. The first trial, combat, came swiftly. Zyrexian champions, renowned for their sheer brute strength, faced off against Jim's human team in hand-to-hand battles. The Zyrexians were towering and merciless, but Jim's men fought smart. They dodged and weaved, exploiting their speed and agility. It wasn't about overpowering the Zyrexians. It was about surviving, outlasting, and finding moments of weakness in the relentless onslaught. The Galactic audience held their breath as the first Zyrexian warrior fell, not to a punch, but to a well-placed trap that sent him crashing into an energy field. Jim smirked as the Zyrexian crowd grumbled in disbelief. Strength wasn't just about force. It was about outthinking the opponent, and Jim's team was proving it. By the time the combat trial ended, both sides had tasted victory, but the humans had scored just enough wins to keep them in the game. Varric, observing from his command post, watched with narrowed eyes. This wasn't going the way he'd expected. The humans weren't playing by traditional rules. They were using their unpredictability to throw off the Zyrexians, and Jim knew Varric was starting to see it. The second trial, strategy, brought a different kind of test. Both sides were given control of a simulated battlefield, where they had to outmaneuver the other to capture key objectives. The Zyrexians approached the challenge like they would any war, aggressively, throwing their forces headlong into the fray. Jim, on the other hand, played a different game. His team used misdirection, fake retreats, and surprise flanking maneuvers to lure the Zyrexians into ambushes. It was a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. By the time the trial ended, the humans had won decisively, forcing the Zyrexian leaders to retreat from the battlefield simulation with their forces in disarray. Watching Varric's reaction, Jim could see the frustration simmering beneath the surface. The High Commander's pride was clearly wounded, but he wasn't the type to back down easily. Jim knew this was the moment that would define the outcome of the entire negotiation. The final trial was survival. Both teams were dropped onto a barren, inhospitable planet, their goal to reach an extraction point while facing environmental hazards and simulated enemy attacks. Jim's team worked as a cohesive unit, relying on their adaptability and resourcefulness to navigate the harsh terrain and avoid deadly traps. The Zyrexians, strong and resilient, plowed through obstacles with brute force, but they struggled when faced with the unpredictability of the planet's shifting landscape. As the trial progressed, Jim kept his eye on the real battle, the psychological one. He knew Varric was watching closely, waiting for the humans to falter, to break under pressure. But instead of showing weakness, Jim's team only grew more confident, finding ways to turn the environment to their advantage. When they finally reached the extraction point first, it wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Back aboard the Zyrexian flagship, Jim stood before Varric once again. The High Commander was silent, his massive form tense, as if weighing the consequences of admitting defeat. The warriors behind him remained still, their eyes fixed on Jim, awaiting their leader's decision. "You fought well, human," Varric rumbled at last, his voice low but steady. "Your people are not as weak as I once believed. You have won this contest." Jim nodded, meeting Varric's gaze without gloating. "And you'll honor the deal?" Varric's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Zerexian honor is not so easily broken. We will withdraw our forces. Your federation will not fall to us today." There was a moment of silence as the weight of those words settled over the room. Jim knew what it had cost Varric to say them, to admit that humans, a species once considered insignificant, had bested the galaxy's fiercest warriors. But Jim also knew that this wasn't just about winning the trials. It was about proving that humanity's strength wasn't in brute force, but in its adaptability, its cleverness, and its unshakable resolve. Varric stepped forward, offering Jim a warrior salute, fist to chest. It was a gesture rarely given, a sign of respect from one warrior to another. Jim returned the salute, feeling the eyes of every Zerexian in the room on him. They may not have liked the outcome, but they respected it. As Jim prepared to leave, Varric spoke again, softer this time. "You're the first to survive negotiations with us, human. Perhaps we will meet again in battle one day." Jim grinned, lighting a fresh cigar as he walked toward the exit. "I'll be ready." Back on the Galactic Federation's capital world, the news of humanity's victory spread like wildfire. The Council, once skeptical of Jim's chances, now viewed humans in an entirely new light. They hadn't just survived, they had thrived in a contest designed to destroy them. As Jim exited the council chamber, the air thick with murmurs of respect and awe, he allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when backed into a corner. And though this victory had spared them from war today, Jim knew it wouldn't be the last time humanity would face the impossible. But that was fine. They'd be ready.